2003. Now, that should raise lights in our head. If the challenge to an indictment, that a superseding indictment that was put out there in November was made in December, then what was Ed Garland doing?
I don't know.
Okay?
Exactly.
All right? The challenge to that indictment, that superseding indictment, should have been made. First of all, let me put it this way. In 2002, Adrian Patrick's not even here yet. In 2002, there was a motion put in asking the government, I believe it was docket 47, asking the government to declare or give notification on any pending indictments, okay, that was forthcoming. Right? Now, that was 2002, before Dr. York made the plea. Dr. York made the plea in around January 23rd, 2003 in the federal court, and then the next day at the state court. Now, if nobody had answered that government's motion that was put out in 2002, then Doc's plea would have rendered that motion moot. Okay? That means that Adrian could not prosecute that motion.
Right.
All right? Now, do you know what I observed happen is that the motion as listed in the docket sheet is still active because it was never answered by the government. It was never prosecuted by the defense, and it was never decided on by the judiciary. Now, the argument could be, well, because Dr. York changed his plea, all right, then the motion was moot. But that was a good amount of time since that motion was put in from the time Dr. York had entered his plea. And to that very day, that motion is still moot, but it gives the appearance as though the government had put the motion in. Okay, when in actuality, it was Doc's attorneys under Ed Garland who put the motion in, but never prosecuted the motion. All right, now what's the impact of that? The impact of that is, all right, that it affected due process rights. That's the impact. Because had Doc would have known that a superseding indictment was going to come, or they were working on something, then he could have been better prepared to defend himself against it. But because it never happened, all right, and to this very day, that docket 47, as that motion has still have not been dismissed or answered by the court. And yet, Dr. York is doing 135 years behind bars.
In the mid-90s, Jacob York became very disgruntled, and his hatred grew towards his father for various reasons. One reason, because his music industry, his music career was just launching, and he needed financial backing to launch his various artists, which you may know some as Little Kim, Junior Mafia, Cameron. A lot of those artists early in their career was backed by Jacob York, and he needed financial support in that, and he came to Malachi York for this financial backing. And Dr. York, told him on numerous occasions no, he couldn't do it simply because of his reputation and his positive influence in the music industry. He was not going to put his life or his name on the line for that negative music that he's so often tried to get us away from. Rap porn and gangster rap and drug dealing lyrics and different things that you hear today. Jacob York was involved also with Junior Mafia, they're known drug dealers and hustlers and what you call gangbangers in the circuit of the music industry. And he he strong-armed his way to the forefront of the music industry by using using Dr. York's name.
He felt like his father helped cause his mother's death.
Mm-hmm.
And he was also in love with another girl that he felt like, he couldn't be with, and that was his reason for getting at his father. He also wanted money for his record business, and he felt like his father had the funds, and he felt like a way to get it was to put him in jail so he could be left as heir.
He brought up the fact that he was in love with Nicole, and he felt that because Nicole liked his father, that it was a betrayal, and that his father's the one that was responsible for it. Jacob felt that his dad was responsible for his mother's death and his brother's death, and he really, really felt that he needed to take revenge on his father. And he was not able to do it, but we were able to do it because we were there longer, and we were closer to his dad than he was.
During the trip and even on the way down to Florida, Jacob would talk about how he hated his father and how he blamed his father for the death of his mother, and how he was upset with his father because he wouldn't give him money for his record label. And he would just talk just really bad about his father. I didn't really understand why. But he always would just say how his father was the blame for his mother's death, and he would talk about how he hated him for that, and that's why he wanted to bring him up with these charges of child molestation, because it would be easy to get someone convicted of child molestation, because if you say a child molested, then automatically people will believe it, and it would just be a believable thing.
Jacob was the one who was telling all these, hey, this is what we're going to do, because he hated his father, of course. Everybody know that. He think that his father needed to be in jail, of course. So he was, keep asking the girls, hey, if we say this, we can make so much money, we can make some books, and this.
During the month of May 2001, Jacob York told me to go to the FBI and tell them I had been molested by Mr. York. Jacob told me that he was already working with the FBI and everything was already set up to bring Mr. York down. Jacob told me that he was on a payroll by the FBI and that I could also cash in on that same payroll, and that we could all be working to make some real money. He told me that he needed more people to go along with it to make it more believable. He said that I was good for it because I was closer to Mr. York. Jacob also tried to convince me to share an apartment with Ada Nicole Lopez and she would coach me more about talking to the FBI.
And it just grew. His hatred just grew. His anger just grew. And Vendetta eventually, I guess, ended his mind on how he could get his father back. For one, his mother passed, and he blames that on Dr. Malachi Z. His mother passed in his life, and his brother also passed on. And because of that, a lot of things happened mentally and emotionally for him, and he needed someone to blame. So I guess that fueled the fire of his anger, and he continued on his pursuit to slander Dr. Malachi Z. York, bring Dr. Malachi Z. York down. And all this is moving on to why this big case and this conspiracy, and this, along with the federal government and state prosecution, used him as a central focus on recruiting these ex-members.
Before we actually went down to Florida, I had a conversation with Jacob outside of his house, and Jacob brought up some feelings that he had